Hello, everybody.
Boa tarde. Rapidamente queria agradecer ao Sesc, à Companhia das Letras e ao Popload por esse momento. Thank you, Patti. And I'll be fast for her to talk a lot to us. So I'll start. I would like to ask you to read a piece of Year of the Monkey to begin.
Okay. Well, the book has many dreams in it. Some are daydreams, some are night dreams, some are seem more reality than dream. So we'll begin with a dream. It was well past midnight when we pulled up in front of the Dream Motel. I paid the driver, made sure I left nothing behind, and rang the bell to wake up the proprietor. "It's almost 3 a.m., she said, but she gave me my key and a bottle of mineral water. My room was on the lowest floor, facing the long pier. I opened the sliding glass door and could hear the sound of the waves, accompanied by the faint barking of sea lions sprawled out on the planks beneath the boardwalk. "Happy New Year," I called out. "Happy New Year," to the waxing moon, the telepathic sea. The drive from San Francisco was just over an hour. I had been wide awake but suddenly felt beat. I took off my coat and left the sliding door slightly open to listen to the waves, but immediately fell into a facsimile of sleep. I awoke abruptly, went to the John, brushed my teeth, removed my boots, and went to bed. Maybe I dreamed. Later I went outside the hotel. It was not a hotel, or not even a motel. The sign said, "Dream Inn," punctuated by a starburst reminiscent of the Sputnik era. I stopped to admire it and took a Polaroid, unpeeled the image and slipped it in my pocket. "Thank you, Dream Motel," I said, half to the air, half to the sign. "It's the Dream Inn," the sign explained. "Oh, yeah, sorry," I said, somewhat taken aback. "Even so, I didn't dream anything." "Nothing? Oh, really, nothing?" "Nothing." I could not help but feel like Alice interrogated by the hookah-smoking caterpillar. I looked down at my feet, avoiding the sign's scrutinizing energy. "Well, thanks for the picture," I said, preparing to shove off. However, my departure was derailed by a sudden popping up of animated Tenniel, the upright mock turtle, the fish and frog servants, the dodo decked in his one grand jacket sleeve, the horrid duchess and cook, and Alice herself, gloomily presiding over an endless tea party where, pardon us all, no tea was being served. I wonder if the sudden bombardment was self-induced or courtesy of the magnetic charge of the Dream Inn sign. And what about now? "The mind," I cried out, exasperated as the animated sketches multiplied at an alarming rate. "The waking mind," the sign chortled triumphantly. I turned away, breaking the transmission. In truth, being somewhat wall-eyed, I often witnessed such leaping about, most often to the right. Besides, once fully roused, the brain is receptive to all kinds of signals, but I wasn't about to confess that to a sign. "I didn't dream anything," I shouted back stubbornly, heading down the hill, flanked by floating salamanders.
I'm gonna. I have two questions. The first one is if you could talk a little bit about the title of the book and why did you choose this title, and also if you could talk about Alice in Wonderland, a work of nonsense, and was lack of logic something you felt at the time you're writing?
Well, yes. I'll start with Alice, since we've already read where I'm referencing Alice. When I was a little girl reading Alice in Wonderland, it didn't seem like nonsense to me. It all seemed perfectly logical. And I thought Alice's world was very similar to mine, because I always saw talking things, talking turtles, and my toothbrush talked to me. And so her world seemed very natural to me. So there's some of that sense of going through life with these alternative realities in the book. And why I called it Year of the Monkey was because it was. I didn't plan to write a book that year. I was actually, at least not that book, I was writing a whole different book, but then my birthday is right before the turn of the year, December 30th. So I had my birthday and New Year's Eve in the Fillmore West with my band, and we had a big concert. And one of my great friends, Sandy Perlman, had a bad accident, and he was unable to go on a little trip with me. He was in the hospital. So I had to go on the trip alone, and I had no friend. So I wrote in my notebook every day. My notebook became my friend, and the story evolved. And then I realized it was a very difficult year, a very mischievous year with many dark turns. And I realized that it was the Chinese lunar year of the monkey, which is a very mischievous year. So that's why I called it Year of the Monkey.
You wrote Just Kids and M-Train a considerable time after the stories in them happened. And in Year of the Monkey, on the other hand, very emotional things appear to be happening at the moment of writing. How this different aspects, affected the book?
Oh, thank you. That's a good question. I wrote Just Kids about the long past because Robert Mapplethorpe asked me to write about our youth the day before he died. So that book was written as a vow for Robert. And of course it had to go backwards because already much time had passed. When I wrote M-Train, I didn't plan to, but I also was looking back at the past with my late husband. So another book about a great love in my life. The first being Robert, and the second being my beautiful husband. But Year of the Monkey is the only book I've written in time, and that's something that I struggled to keep. I didn't want it to go backwards. I wanted to keep it in pace of my life, so that the reader would feel like they were moving with me through as present as you can get to the reader. So it's very much in present tense, and it was so in that way it stayed my companion. It didn't send me back. If anything, it was sending me futuristically.
And also, differently from your other memoirs, it seems to me that Year of the Monkey, we can tell there's fiction mixed with facts and dreams. And was it intentional? Did you feel that some things you could only express by creating a story?
Well, Just Kids is a very responsible book. Everything in Just Kids is fact. Even if it's poetically written, there's no fantasy. Everything is as accurate as I could write. And in M-Train, also quite accurate with dream mixed in. And with Year of the Monkey, I decided it was such an irresponsible sign. I wanted it to be an irresponsible book. So I decided that the book was going to be more like me. And I live half in dream, half daydreaming, writing, walking in the present, but my mind is always moving all over the place. So I wanted, sometimes I'm talking to somebody, and while I'm talking, my brain is making a story about something else. And I have what I call a jumping bean mind. Do you ever see those little Mexican jumping beans? You put them on the floor and they go boop, 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 boop. That's my mind. So I wanted the book to be, to show my world. And also to have fun with the reader. You know, some of it's fiction, it's based, it's a factual move. My friends are factual. My dear friend Sandy Perlman, Sam Shepard, my children. But there are fictional characters and animated objects. But this is my life. That's how I live.
So my next question is about dreams. I want to know if you write down your dreams and to remember them, if you change them when you write about them, and also something that was interesting was that they are epic. Sometimes, you know, they have like a passing of the centuries, they have many people, great landscapes, and they have this epic quality. So, could you talk about it?
I've always been a big dreamer, and I've often had epic dreams that when I woke up, I felt like I just saw a movie. I've dreamed whole projects, and I've always written down my dreams. When I was younger, I thought I might be a school teacher. And I had a class, I was teaching writing, and a lot of the kids didn't want to write, or they said they didn't know what to write about. So I gave them all a notebook and said, every morning, write down what you dreamed. Even if you only remember things like blue dogs running across a green field, just write that. And when at the end of the year, you'll see you might have a surrealist masterpiece. And also, it's a good discipline. So your dreams can be very instructive. In the book, some of the dreams are actual sleep dreams, and some of them are daydreams. And if I read later a dream, I will tell the difference.
So, you were writing this book, but did you know it was already a book while you were writing, or you in a moment you realized that it was a book, and then did you edit? Did you go back to the text? Did you?
Well, it's funny. At first, it was like I said, I write every day anyway, but I tend to write disjointed things. Sometimes song lyrics, a little poem, something I'm thinking about. But as soon as I saw a consistency and I started developing characters, I knew it was going to be something, and I just kept it up. And like I said, in my solitude, it was good company. I did a lot of editing because truthfully, it was not it wasn't totally well received at first by my publisher. And it was even more abstract, and they gave me some good suggestions, and I thought about it. And then I tried to, you know, without compromise, make it a little more reader-friendly, because sometimes it got very abstract. But I did keep the very abstract things for a less reader-friendly volume in the future. But it was, I'm glad that I made the changes because it made it, it made it a better presentation, especially because both of my good friends in the book didn't have long to live, so it allowed me in this small book to pay some homage to them.
You like showing the things you write to friends. You like this relation with the editor to suggest things. You have like special friends that you show your writing, or is it something private and you show it when it's ready?
Mostly it's private. My good friend Lenny Kay, who is here with me, he's been my guitar player for almost half a century and my friend, and he's also a writer. So he's the one that I will get feedback from. In terms of editing, I don't really like being edited very much, but I've learned that sometimes an editor has very good ideas. So even if I only listen to 20%, that 20% is golden. I mean, it's wonderful, you know. So you know, I'm a little open-minded, but not hugely open-minded.
Another thing that's in the book is you turn off your phone for many days and you disconnect, and phones are really something we have all the time. It's like a part of us. So I want to know if you feel the need to disconnect, and what's your relation to the you know, social media, and is writing a lonely activity for you?
Well, in terms of the phone, I never wanted one, and I held out for a long time. And my good friend is Johnny Depp, the actor, and I went to Puerto Rico with him while he was filming, and my son was trying to find me, and he couldn't find me because I had no phone, and it was not easy to find Johnny Depp, but he finally found him, and then he begged Johnny to make me get a phone. So I talked to my son, and the next day on set, Johnny came up to me and handed me a phone. And he said, "Here's your phone." And it had a phone number in it, and it was my phone. And I still have it. So, he brought me into the world of the phone. I like the phone for taking pictures. I think it's useful. In terms of social media, I'm not that involved in social media, but I have an Instagram, which my daughter set up for me. And again, someone else pushed me to do something, but I love my Instagram because it's global. I get messages from all over the world. I got many messages from the people in Sao Paulo, everywhere I'm going, and I can share book ideas and some political messages, and you know, just things that I think are important or fun, and also I don't allow any you know, fighting or cruelty on my Instagram. If people write stuff like that, I just delete them. And people say, "Oh, that's not freedom of speech." And I say, my Instagram isn't about freedom of speech. My Instagram is a cultural space that we share, you know, ideas and maybe people's birthdays and things, but I know, you know, right?
So I started to...
What date is this today?
14th of November?
14th, okay. I thought it was the 17th, which is George O'Keeffe's birthday, so... I don't know whose birthday it is today, but happy birthday,
So I started to take note of the number of authors and writers you mentioned, and it was incredible. And so I want to know if these authors that appear in your book are like almost fictional characters. I want to know if you imagine conversations with them or what they would say in a certain situation. If you have stories for them.
Well, I've always loved books since a little girl. I don't talk that much to writers except to thank them. Like when I was a little girl, I thanked Collodi for Pinocchio. And when I was saying my prayers, and thank you, Mr. Collodi, for writing Pinocchio. I often go to visit to the graves of writers, and I'll just hang out with them and sit there and thank them again, but also just be there. You know, I'm a writer visiting a writer, and I find that comforting. I've visited Sylvia Plath, and I've visited Yeats, and I've visited, a million people. So, but I mention a lot of these books and writers in my books, so that the reader will. Some readers don't know these books, so they can learn about, or they can maybe decide they're going to buy Billy Budd, or they're going to get 2666, or, you know, like in my next book, I'm going to write about Space Invaders, my new favorite book. So I think it's a good way to share wonderful things.
And you also like translated authors. It's rare to find names that write in English.
Yeah.
And I want to know why and how this. You love French authors, German authors.
Yes. Well, I find books. A lot of times, the most interesting literature is in translation. The most interesting poetry. I mean, obviously, I love Allen Ginsberg and Walt Whitman. I think Herman Melville was a great master, and Nathaniel Hawthorne, J.D. Salinger, or Louisa May Alcott. But a lot of contemporary American literature, it just, truthfully, I'm not attracted to it aesthetically, or, I mean, some of it is very, I like writers that their mind is expansive. And even like I mentioned, this little book by the Chilean writer Nona Fernandez. It's a little tiny book called Space Invaders. It's about childhood. It's about the political unrest in Chile when she was young. It's about coming of age. It's about the imagination. It's about writing. All in this tiny little book. More in this little book than a lot of huge books that are published in America that seem basically concerned with some American ideology. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just simply saying I'm not drawn to them because the world of the imagination is not primary. And I find in French literature, German literature, the Latin American literature, the imagination, as well as, you know, the political world, the revolution, all of the difficulties, they all come together, and the imagination is never sacrificed for just fact. So that's probably why. I hope that I explained it all right.
Yes, yes. But well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about Devotion, the other book that's being released in Brazil. Then we can go back to Year of the Monkey.
Everywhere.
So, what I like about Devotion is that there's a totally fictional short story embraced by this kind of essay, this talk about the process of creation and the ways inspiration works with you. And I want to know what moves you to write and how this book came to life.
Well, it's a very small book. I received a small prize at Yale, and the nature of the prize was I had to write a long essay on how and why I write, and they would publish it. And I thought this was very interesting, but I'm not a real essay writer. It's not really what I do. I don't have that kind of vocabulary or intellectual capacity for writing essays. And so I wanted to do something new. And I read Margarita Duras' book on writing, which is a very interesting, unique way to talk about writing. So I decided to show, to keep a journal and to show the reader, how I negotiate the world as I'm writing, where I'm writing, how my mind works, how I pull things from all over to make a story. And I didn't know what the story would be, and then I was on a long train ride in France and wound up writing a whole story. And when I examined the story at the end, I realized that within the story, there are many references to the journal around it. For instance, the round, I keep talking about a round pond, perfectly round. And I realized that that round pond came with the eggs I had every morning at this cafe. In France, they make it in a small round pan, and your eggs are perfectly round. And I would look at them thinking, how could they be so perfect? And so this plate of eggs became a pond. A Russian skater that I watched, a young Russian skater, brilliant little skater, one night on TV, became my central character. Another character in the book was actually modeled on a Serbian art dealer that I know. So it's just, I found it's like I was being my own detective, finding how I write. So I put it together for the reader, so the reader would have all the components. They would see, yes, I write on trains and cafes, in my hotel, in the bathroom, everywhere. And where I get my inspiration from, as well as giving the reader the story. And I was hoping that would have some resonance with the reader.
There's also like a hidden Arthur Rimbaud in the story, like it's the poet who gives the pieces. And I want to know about this influence in your life. You even bought Rimbaud's childhood house, and you talk a lot about Rimbaud.
Well, I loved Rimbaud. When I was 16, I was a bit of a wallflower. I didn't have a boyfriend, and I found a book of illuminations with Rimbaud's picture on the cover, and I thought he would make a great boyfriend. So he was my secret boyfriend for a while. And I wrote many poems to him and read all of his poetry. And as I got older, I appreciated him on many levels, as a traveler, as an adventurer. His letters, he has a big body of letters. And so he has really been part of my readers and literary life. I mean, I don't think about him as my boyfriend anymore, but
Do you reread him?
Yes, because when I was young and I read his poetry, truthfully, I didn't understand it all, but I was captivated by the beauty of his language. Even in he's wonderfully translated. So even in translation, I was very captivated by his poetry. And as I got older, I comprehended it more. And it still stands for me. Like The Drunken Boat is a masterpiece, whether you're a young person reading it, or at my age, I'll be 73, and I'm still reading it going, wow, what a great poem. And, but about his house, the farmhouse that he wrote Season in Hell, and that he grew up a lot in, on this piece of land that was his mother's. The Germans bombed the house, and then it was rebuilt with the same stones and on the land. And a very old woman had it up to about 5 years ago. She had it for like 70 years, and she loved Rimbaud and wanted to protect it from people developing it, you know, knocking it down, making condominiums. So when she got too old, she asked me if I would buy it for not too much money and fix it up and keep it safe. So that's all
open to visit? Is it possible to go there and visit?
Well, I have to put a little, I fixed the water, and I made a tiny little shower, and I have to put a little furniture, just a bed I'll put in a desk, and I'm going to start a foundation where people can come and stay a month to write. That's what it'll be, from anywhere. Try to work something out, and it just, you know, for 1 month, one can just be there just by themselves, because it's not for parties, it's not for a love affair, it's for writing. So, you know, and a lot of the writer's life is, you know, is a life of solitude, and so I would like to give the writer a beautiful proximity. That is where he suffered, and under much duress and stress wrote A Season in Hell, crying while his young sister wrote a diary entry saying that Arthur locked the door and would be crying writing this long piece, A Season in Hell. And so we have the land, and we have, you know, and we have the same stones that surrounded him. So I think it would be nice for writers.
Amazing. I want to talk about another French writer. It's not on those books, but it's an amazing story, and I want to ask you about the Jean Genet trip you did to Suriname, and it is a big influence in your life, the Thief's Journal and Jean Genet.
Yes, I read A Thief's Journal when I was about maybe 7. No, I was about 18 or 19, because it wasn't translated yet or available in America. And when I read it, I recognized that this was the genre for me, which is very much echoed in Year of the Monkey, because it's autobiographical fiction, and I love this genre. I like to be, I'm happy to be the narrator or the central character, but moving through fact and fiction, but it's still autobiographical because it's the autobiography of your atmosphere, of your mind, and so the book was a very big influence. My friends, William Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg and Gregory Corso all knew Genet. I never met Genet, but Genet writes in A Thief's Journal that he was brokenhearted because he never went to French Guiana, to Devil's Island, or to Saint Laurent prison, because all the great French criminals went there. And when I got married, my husband wanted children, and I said, all right. He said, but all right, I know you'd like to travel. Pick one place in the whole world for our first wedding anniversary. And so I said, I want to go to Devil's Island. I want to go to French Guiana for Genet. I'm going to go. I wanted to go there and bring him something back, some stones from the earth of the place that he wanted to go and didn't. And my husband was very surprised but he said, okay, and we went. And I got those stones, and but then Genet died. I didn't get to give Genet the stones. But after my husband died, I decided to go to Morocco and find his grave, which I did, and bury the stones inside his grave. So where Genet is, where his grave is Down deep in the earth are stones from Saint Laurent prison. I'm glad that you give your seal of approval, because other people think I'm crazy.
But you love traveling. You feel the need to travel. If you stay too long in one place, you feel. And do you have any literary places you plan to go one day, or do you have a list?
Well, I really want to go to Algeria to see the grave of Isabel Eberhard, but Americans aren't supposed to go. But if I can sneak into Algeria, I'll go there. Don't tell anybody. But there's probably a million, visit Rilke's grave, or, one of the pilgrimages that I made that was so wonderful was to visit the last home of Roberto Bolaño, and I went to Blanes, where he finished 2666, and such a masterpiece. And I hope to go. I'd like to in Chile. It would be wonderful to visit the home of Parra, Niccolo Parra, and there's many places I'd like to go. I still, but yes, I am a traveler. When I was a little girl, I came from a poor family, and when I would say I was going to see the world, my mother showed me a globe, and she said, "There it is." I said, "No, I'm going to travel some way," but so I feel very lucky to have traveled so much.
And your mother was a big influence in your reading habit, right? You used to go to a library. Did you have this? How did you start reading? How did you fall in love with books?
I fell in love with books as soon as I saw them. When I was little, my parents, really little, before I was maybe 2, my mother and father were always reading. They didn't have a television, and it was in the 40s, so after World War II. And they were always reading, and I thought, what are they doing? I was thinking, there must be something really great in these things. And I would take them, didn't know what they were, and I would put them under my pillow and sleep on them, hoping it would come into my head. And finally, when I was 3 or 4, very young, I asked my mother to teach me to read. And my mother never finished school, and she was a waitress, and she worked very hard. And she, after work, she would sit with me, and she taught me to read. And she gave me the 2 most beautiful gifts besides my life. She taught me to read, and she taught me to pray.
That was my next question about praying, and I want to know, is praying a type of religion for you, or and also if you could say that a poem could be a prayer?
Well, absolutely. A song can be a prayer. A poem can be a prayer. Anything can be a prayer, really. To me, prayer is communication. And I don't attach it to any religion, but I think prayer is beautiful. I have been in mosques listening to people pray, in Catholic churches, in small, humble Southern churches, all kinds of places. I think that it's when people, sometimes people pray in a ritualistic way, and that's one way of praying, and other times they're saying everything that's in their heart. And that's why I often like to go to churches and sit and light a candle, not because of religion. I don't have a religion. I don't really want any system, because religions really are man-made. I'm not against them, but I don't need one. I like to have direct communication, but I also like to be in places where the devotion and concentration of the people can be felt in the air.
Before we go back to Year of the Monkey, what are you reading now? What book would you recommend to a young reader today? If someone asks you, do you have any?
Well, I mean, there's such a, that's so difficult. I mean, I would, it depends how ambitious they were, you know, to read. You know, if they wanted to read a beautiful, simple book, I would say The Children's Crusade by Marcel Schwab, or this book that I just read, this little book I've mentioned, Space Invaders, such a great book, or the musical Brain by Cesar Ayres, or, you know, or Illuminations of Rimbaud, or Pinocchio, Alice in Wonderland. I mean, there's a million books. I couldn't just say, I can't even say one book because it makes me want to say 100 books. When I was a young girl, reading Little Women, and being introduced to a young girl like myself, sort of a tomboy who, you know, wasn't interested in so many girl things, but wanted to be a writer, she was very important to me. And, but so was Catcher in the Rye, you know, so I think that there's a whole world of books, and I would say, instead of saying, read this book, read The Glass Bead Game, read this book or that book, I would just say read, and find what speaks to you.
Do you read out loud? Do you do that with, you know, novels? You have this?
No, I don't read other people's books out loud, but when I'm writing, I read out loud. In fact, sometimes I forget that I'm in a cafe or something, and I start reading out loud because I want to hear the rhythm of it, to see how it, you know, because rhythm is very important to me. And sometimes something seems wrong in a sentence, and I think, it needs 3 more syllables. So I have to figure out how to keep that rhythm going. But every once in a while, I'll read someone's work, often because it's a special occasion. I'll read a poem of William Blake's, or I'll read, you know, usually or an excerpt of, you know, a little excerpt of Moby Dick or something, but, you know, it's usually because it's for something special.
And you were talking about rhythm, and you also like detective stories.
Yes.
And it's the opposite of poetry. It's like it's logic. It's a very mental, rational thing. I want to know about this.
Well, I disagree. I'm sorry, because I like you so much, but I have to. I think the poet and the detective are very similar, because they're both using all their concentration to get to the essence of something. So in a poem, you're trying to distill all of these different things in your head and make it into a stream of words that somehow creates a little body that makes sense. Or you're coming right down to the last line. What is the last line? What's the punchline of the poem? And the detective is also going through all kinds of leads and all kinds of, you know, suspects and all kinds of things, and has to distill it into a body of knowledge, so they get down to the very end. And what is the end? They catch the bad guy. They catch the criminal. So the criminal, when they get their man and they get the last line of their poem, I feel the poet and the detective are very similar.
You also like detective series in TV, right?
Yes.
You like watching TV? What's your
Well,
the show you're watching now?
I never watched that much TV till I was on the road a lot, and I only speak English, but I would be on the road a lot and start watching TV because I couldn't sleep. And I started watching like detective shows, American detective shows I never saw, or English detective shows I never saw, but in Polish or German or Spanish. I would read all these detective shows. And finally I started seeing them in English to see what I was watching. But I love detective shows. Mostly I like the British detective shows. I like detective shows that aren't very violent, and where the crime is like, you know, less important than the mind of the detective. I'm really more interested in the detective and how his mind works and the atmosphere he's moving in than the crime itself, because I don't like violence. People think I like violence and crime. I don't like it at all. I like detectives.
So we are getting to the end. Just you know.
I'm sorry, we have to go to sound check. That's why, because we have a concert tomorrow. So I just wanted to say I knew we wouldn't have much time, but I thought it would be worth coming to see you. So sorry it's so short.
So I would like to end asking you something and then asking you to read the other part. You're gonna read. So the political moment, I'm going back to Year of the Monkey. The political moment of America in 2016 appears just a few times in the book, but it causes a very strong impact on the reader, like it's lying in the shadow. 3 years have passed, and I would like to know if you're still a little optimistic, like you wrote our quiet rage give us wings, the possibility to negotiate the gears winding backwards. So I want to know if you still feel
a quiet rage. My rage is less than quiet, but well, I mean, that particular year was very difficult for me because I thought it was the election process was very dirty, more dirty than usual. It involved obscene amounts of money, wasted money that could be used to improve children's schools or roads or to help other people, and the outcome, of course, was terrible. And and in the book I even say I had a bad feeling about an election year in the Year of the Monkey, because it was about as mischievous and dark as it could be. And how I feel now, I'm always optimistic, because to be alive and appreciate life, being alive is to be optimistic, because the alternative is to be pessimistic and not believe that anything good can happen. We are in very dark times in terms of what is happening to our environment globally. We have terrible leaders all over the world.
We know that here.
And I understand your situation, I understand my own country's situation, and Turkey's situation, and all these different, Israel's situation. We have a lot of leaders in the world who do not have a humanist or environmentalist point of view, which is what we need in the 21st century. And so it's heartbreaking, but we are resilient and we are alive, and as long as we are alive and believe that we have some power or much power in unity, we can make change. So of course I'm going to stay optimistic, but I can't say that I'm, happy or without anger or anxiety about what's happening in the world. It's just that as a mother, as a writer, as a human being, I have to believe in life and I have to do my work.
As someone wrote, it is amazing how masterfully you can rescue beauty from disaster. So,
thank you. That's so nice. It's so nice to talk to you, really. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mind if I stand? I'm used to standing when I'm reading.
Arrumar o microfone? Tem
I wish I had two heads. So I'm going to, maybe it has to come down just a little. Just a little. Thanks, Andrew. Andrew is my tour manager, and he is, I know somewhere is Lenny Kay. Where are you, Lenny? Stand up. Hopefully see you tomorrow. We were talking about dreams. I do have daydreams, I have funny dreams, stories. This is a dream that is gleaned from reality, for my country, a terrible reality, and it was a dream the night before the inauguration of our current president, who I do not choose to name. I dreamed of a long train of migrants walking from one end of the earth to another, far beyond the ruins of what had once been home. They walked through deserts and barren plains and strangling wetlands, where wide ribbons of inedible algae, brighter than the Persian sky, wrapped around their ankles. They walked dragging their banners behind, clothed in the fabric of lamentations, seeking the extended hand of humankind, shelter where none was offered. They walked where wealth was shuttered within works of architectural mastery, immense boulders encasing modern huts, ingenuously obscured by dense indigenous vegetation. The air within was dry, yet all doors, windows, and wells were hermetically sealed, as if in anticipation of their coming. All doors were closed. And I dreamed that all their hardships were viewed on global screens, personal tablets, two-way wristwatches, becoming a popular form of reality-based entertainment. All watched dispassionately as they tread unforgiving ground, hope bleeding into hopelessness, yet all sighed with emotion as art flourished. Musicians rose from their torpor, composing mesmerizing works of symphonic suffering. Sculpture sprang as if from the covered ground. Muscular dancers depicted the torments of the exiled, rushing the lengths of great stages as if overcome by pneumatic futility. All watched riveted, even as the world in its dependable folly kept spinning. And I dreamed the monkey leapt upon it, this mirror ball of confusion, and broke into dancing. And in my dream, it was pouring, as if with a heartbroken vengeance. Yet unconscious of the weather, I went without a raincoat, walking all the way to Times Square. People were gathering before a mammoth screen, watching the inauguration. And a young lad, the very same who alerted the populace that the emperor had no clothes, cried, "Look, he's back again. You let him out of the bag." The festivities were followed by a new installment of a reenactment of the trials of the migrants. Wooden boats streaked with gold lay abandoned in the shallow waters. A gilded mascot descended, screeching and flapping its monstrous wings. Dancers writhed in agony as barbs of compassion pricked their feet. The onlookers wrung their hands in sympathetic fury. Yet this was nothing to those walking the earth, the circumference killers, tracing words in the windswept hand, tracing words in the windswept sands. Portray us if you must, but we are the living thorns. And yes, the babies will cry and the children will cry, because this is what we are crying about. And to hear a child's cry in the middle of speaking this is very moving, because if we don't make change in our world, all our children will be crying. Portray us if you must, but we are the living thorns, the pierced and the piercing. And I awoke, and what was done was done. The human chain was in motion, and their voices played in the air like a cloud of ravaging insects. One cannot approximate truth, add nor take away, for there is no one on earth like the true shepherd, and there is nothing in heaven like the suffering of real life.